Yes, today we talk about the art of public speaking, and my name is Wahome Ngari. I'm from the Personal Finance Academy. In our last discussion, we agreed that we have to take up leadership roles. And so if you have to be a leader, then you have to be a good communicator. And public speaking is one of the best ways to be a communicator. If you're in sales, you want to sell more confidently. You want to make sure your presentations are impactful because that earns you a pathway to promotion. If you want to be elected in office as a leader, then you must present your facts. Present them in a way your audience can hear them, because that's how you're able to influence more people. For my listener, I don't know who you recognize as a good public speaker. For some of us, maybe in our earlier years, we got a chance to listen to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In our times, I think we listened to Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And a lot of us will have listened to PLO Lumumba. And we have no doubt we can say those are great public speakers. Maybe we are not looking at getting to that level, but there's no harm getting into that level. And what we know is that people who are excellent public speakers know the art of public speaking. And they often practice some key techniques. And those key techniques are what we are going to be talking about. Because public speaking is a skill that can actually open doors. But it's not just about talking. It is actually connecting with the audience. You have to connect with the audience. Excellent public speakers don't just wing it. They don't just get it right. They practice, they polish, they perfect their strategies so that they can be able to captivate their listeners. So in our discussion today, we're going to consider the key techniques that exceptional speakers often practice. The first key technique that we need to know in public speaking, we must master the art of storytelling. And I say this is Africa. We like stories. Exceptional public speakers understand the power of storytelling because stories captivate audiences. They make complex ideas more digestible, and they can create an emotional connection between the speaker and the audience. And there's nothing as good as that emotional connection, that you can be with me, you can feel me. Consider any memorable speech you've ever had, there will have been a story in that speech. Chances are it contained a story or two. Why? Because stories are very relatable. People relate easily with the story. They allow listeners to see themselves in the narrative, making the speaker's message more personal and more impactful. Because when you're speaking to people, it must be personal, it must have an impact. And by reading a captivating story isn't something that happens by chance. It is a skill that you need to hone. When you're going to speak, you say, what is the story I'll have to capture my message? And great public speakers often practice their stories. They refine every detail until they just get it right. They know exactly when to pause for dramatic effect, how to use their voice to emphasize key points, and which elements of the story will resonate most with the audience. And we must always remember as we're telling this story that we need to be authentic. It makes sure that your story is genuine and your story is relative. Because here in Africa we love stories. In fact, if it is a personal story, people relate with it much better. So when you're telling your own story, people can see you're one of them and they can relate with you very well. The other technique is about embodying confidence. You know, when a speaker steps onto the stage with a sense of self-assuredness, it immediately sets the tone and grabs the audience attention. But let me share a little secret with you. Even the most experienced speakers deal with their nerves. There's something called stage fright. They have found a way of dealing with it, but it is something that you're going to deal with. When you walk onto the stage, a few things will happen. You might start a bit of sweat, your heart might start beating faster. Some things sometimes outside your control. And it is in managing that lets you to take over. If I look back at my earlier public speaking events, I was invited to eulogize a friend in a fully packed church. And you can actually imagine what the environment is. My palms were actually sweaty. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. I had a piece of paper and you could actually see the paper was shaking. And my voice was dry and broken. You know the way you want to say something and the voice is not coming through? Well, partly because of grief, I'd lost a friend, but mostly because of stage fright. How did I get myself out of there? I just remembered a piece of advice I was given by a mentor. And I was told there are times when you fake it until you make it. You have to fake it. So that's exactly what I did. And the interesting thing is, I felt more confident as I went on speaking. That day I learned a very valuable lesson, that confidence is not just about feeling secure. It is actually exuding it, letting people see that you are secure. And that is why when you go on the stage, it is not just about standing tall or speaking clearly. You need to own the stage. And one of the things we do a lot of times as speakers is we destroy that confidence. And that is why we should avoid apologizing to an audience for things they don't know, and things that we don't even have to tell them. Don't tell them you're speaking on a short notice. They don't have to know it was a short notice. What does it add? It makes them now start looking for the mistakes that you're going to make. You don't have to tell them, I don't feel qualified to address you. Don't take away your confidence. It is important when you're on stage, you become confident. When you're not confident, you actually even destroy the ability of the audience to listen to you. People feel uncomfortable when they see you're not confident. The third technique is about utilizing the power of body language. The spoken word is a powerful tool, but it's not the only thing that public speakers have at their disposal, because we know body language plays a very crucial role in delivering a compelling speech. And great public speakers often practice their body language just as meticulous as they rehearse their speech. They know how to use their hands. You can't be solid, like you're not moving. You're stuck on the podium. Your hands are holding somewhere. It's good to have gestures so that people can see how you emphasizing the points. You change your posture. You can't be standing in the same position all the time. You must command some attention. You must have some stage presence. And you must maintain eye contact. You can't be looking away from the audience. I had a lecturer at the university who never looked at us, not a single day. He was always looking this side or the other side. We were never confident in anything he ever said. We doubted everything that he said. If you want to connect with the audience, eye contact. You don't have to look at everybody, but your eye must meet the eye of a few people in the audience. So you must maintain some eye contact, because that way you build trust with the audience. So next time you're preparing for a speech, don't just focus on the script. Don't focus on what you're going to say. That's why people say you have to stand in front of a mirror and observe your body language. See how you move. You cannot be in a slouching position like you're tired, that you're exhausted. Gestures must be natural, must be good. And your facial expression must go with the word. If you're giving out a sad speech, it must be seen on your face. It must be seen in the way you do. So body language is very helpful when we are delivering the message, and we need to practice how to use body language. And that gives us the stage presence that we are looking for. The other technique that we use in public speaking is mastering the pose. Mastering the art of the pose is a technique that often sets aside good speakers from the great ones. Poses can serve multiple purposes. You are speaking and you stop. That's what we call a pose. You can create suspense using the pose. You can emphasize a point, and you can give the audience time to absorb what you just said. You say something and you don't rush to the next thing, you take a short break. A pause can help you as a speaker to catch your breath, because there are times you speak and you can feel you're running out of breath. And sometimes we actually use a pause to gather our thoughts, because you want to have your thoughts. You want to be very clear on what you're saying. But using pauses effectively requires that you practice. It can be tempting to rush through a speech and get over it, especially if you feel you're getting nervous. Your nerves are running fast. So we try to incorporate strategic pauses in our delivery. If I say this at this point, I'll take a pause, I'll take a stop. Experiment with different lengths and placements of the pause so that word can work best for your message. So don't be in a hurry to leave the stage. Give the audience a chance to hear you well, and a pause will be very, very important for us. The other technique here is about engaging the audience. Public speaking is not a one-way street. It's a conversation between the speaker and the audience. Engaging with your audience makes them feel included and part of your narrative. How do you do this? You can ask questions. You can encourage participation. You can even share a light-hearted joke with the audience. The goal is to break the ice and make your audience comfortable and receptive. Adults learn best when you involve them. But it is important to avoid overused lines, because sometimes they are annoying. You've heard all those many speakers who tell your neighbor, and you tell your neighbor until your neighbor is tired with you telling them. You can consider activities that they can do which has a relevance to your speech, because if you don't do that, chances are you lose your audience, You know how sleep comes into the audience easily? Because they're feeling not part of it. One technique found effective is to start by asking an audience a rhetorical question or actually a brain teaser. It can be a small activity, just some exciting activity, a brain teaser. And you know, as people get engaged, so it is just a small activity, a technique. It can be a brain teaser, it can be a rhetorical question. And this immediately gets the audience thinking and sets the tone for a more interactive session. But remember, engaging your audience requires you that you're present and you're attentive. You must pay attention to their reaction. You must adjust your delivery as needed and always respect their input. If you ask a question they don't answer, you cannot push them. So that's why you have to be present. You have to see the reaction, because sometimes we face different types of audiences. You might be dealing with a hostile audience, and they might not actually take into what you're saying. But it is important to make sure that we engage the audience. Technique number 6 is being authentic and sincere. You know, in the world of public speaking, authenticity speaks louder than eloquence. And I think here politicians have a big problem. They are more eloquent than they are authentic. They actually tell you things you can actually see that cannot be true. That is not possible. That's not doable. That's a lie. And you know, there are many people who just write them off, because you cannot tell me something that is not true and expect me to continue listening to you. Because people connect with sincerity, and they can often tell when a speaker is genuine. Being an effective public speaker is not just using big words, you know, perfect grammar or telling nice jokes. It's about sharing your passion and sharing your truth. It's about letting your audience see that you're real, you're human, you're fresh. And here is a simple truth. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Somebody said that. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When you speak from the heart, your audience can feel it. They can connect with you at a deeper level, making your message more impactful. And it is good to be vulnerable. You can share your successes, but there's nothing wrong about sharing your failures. You can discuss your failures with the audience. Yes, there's a personal space you may not want to go into, but it is good for them to see you are human, you have success stories, you have parts where you did not succeed. In these human moments, you make it relatable and memorable for your audience, that they can relate with you at a personal level. Very, very important to get that relationship. Number 7, we're looking at adapting to unexpected situations. No matter how much you prepare, public speaking often comes with a fair share of surprises. Things happen. You did not anticipate them. You know, a microphone just stops working. You have a big audience and the microphone has failed. You face power failure. I don't know whether you've ever faced power failure. You are hoping you will do your projections. You had everything prepared, and power just fails. And now, what next? People actually sometimes panic. Your slides might not load. The computer was working, and everything was checked out. And you come to the screen, and you cannot load. I've seen people, yes, you have the computer, but you can't even find out where your work is. You're wondering, did I come with it or didn't I come with it? And the audience can be hostile even before you speak. And we face this when you're speaking to employees of companies, and they think you come from the management side. There's a management decision that you're coming to deliver. So sometimes the audience can be hostile. Or questions from the audience might catch you off guard. They might ask you something. It may be very personal. You don't want to discuss it. It may be very controversial. You don't want to share your opinion in public. It may be something you've never been asked before. You don't have an answer to it at all. So all these things are going to happen. Often you will face these challenges if you're a public speaker. It's a very, very common thing that you're going to find these things. In one incident, I had spent hours preparing the slides. And when I went to the room full of people, the slides were not going to come on. So how do you continue? You know, instead of panicking, take a deep breath and decide to use this opportunity to connect with the audience on a more personal level. In this case, I moved from the podium, because you know the computer was on the podium. And I realized now there's no point of standing on the podium. You can actually now move around to where the people are. And you continue with your speech without the slides. And that day I learned that you have to be adaptable, and it is important to get prepared. Because things may not always go as planned, but you handle the unexpected situation, because that's how you're going to become a good speaker. We always say you need to have a backup plan. And yes, you have everything on your computer, but maybe have a printed copy of your speech. Have it printed. Come with a print. Put it in the pocket. You never know. You might need it. You can actually have your copy on your phone or have it on your tablet. Or better still, have a card. We call them bullet cards. You have your bullet points on a memory jogger card. That even if that didn't come, if you actually just saw the bullet points, you can actually remember what you wanted to discuss. And the audience may never know that you actually lost your slides or you lost your speaking points. Have a backup plan, because things just happen. If you ask a question you don't know, own up. Say, I don't know that. If you ask a very personal question, you can actually say, I respect the question, but I feel because of personal reasons, I may not want to share or discuss that question. The audience will not fight you too hard for being there. That's what good public speakers do. The other technique is about using visual aids effectively. And visual aids can be powerful tools in public speaking. They can help you explain a very complex idea in a simplified manner. It can help you to maintain interest in the audience and can reinforce your key points in your speech. However, using visual aids effectively requires careful planning. It's not just about throwing together a few slides. It's about creating visuals that complement your speech and not distract from it. So when you put the visual aid, it should not actually get people looking at it and not listening to what you're saying. So it must not be a distractor to it. So consider using images, graphs, or short videos to illustrate your points. But remember, less is more. You need to have less information being shown, but explain more of it. Okay? Don't have too much of those visuals that you have. You know, that's why we use large fonts, you use clear images, and you use simple language. When you're speaking to an audience, it is important to understand dynamics of audiences. Now, those who hear and understand, that's how they are wired. When they hear what you say, they easily can get from the words and clearly understand. We call this the audio audience, from the word audio. And when you talk to an audio person, they say, I hear you. When you hear somebody who says many times, I hear you, that's an audio person. But there are people who don't understand just by hearing you. They want to see, and these are the ones we call the visual audience. That visual audience are the people who say, oh, I see. You're talking to them, but they're actually saying, I see. You wonder, what have they said? I was just talking. But from their understanding, they can visualize. They have the memory capacity to be able to visualize. But you should never forget there's another person, the third person. He's called the kinetic person. That kinetic person, they will only understand if you involve them. You're working out numbers with them. You are calculating on your calculator. And they are not very clear what you're doing. But if you kept the calculator where they can see, as you punch the numbers, they understand what you're doing. So when you bring to an audience, you need to understand they are likely to be 3 people. Every 10 that you're speaking to, 4 are generally going to be audio people. They can hear what you say. 3 will actually be visual people. If they don't see, they are not likely to understand. So the audio people, from what they're listening, they can actually create a picture in their mind. But the visual people don't do that. They create the image when they see. And they tend to remember, oh, he had a gray suit. But the last group is the kinetic person. You must involve them. And that is why we must have that activity where you got people to do something as you're speaking. If you don't do that, you're going to lose your audience. And so 4 are audio, 3 are visual, and another 3 are kinetic. So you should never forget that distribution of your audience generally, whether you're talking to adults, whether you're talking to young people, whether you're talking to children. The last technique we want to discuss is about practicing literacy. Practicing and practicing again. Because practice is the cornerstone of exceptional public speaking. It helps you to master your content, you refine your delivery, and you build your own confidence. The truth is, the best public speakers are often the ones who have spent the most time in rehearsal. Even people who get speeches written for them, they actually read that speech before they come. They internalize it. And that's why it looks naturally there. But if you're the one who wrote the speech, you need to actually look at it. If you're not in the written speech format, you don't like written speeches, or you're just talking for a short while, the bullet points are very important, and it's good to go over your bullet points again and again. Practicing your speech allows you to iron out any kinks, in your narrative. You perfect your timing, and you become comfortable with your material. I think that's the important thing. You become comfortable with your material. It's an opportunity to experiment with a different technique and see what works best for you. But just remember, practicing doesn't just mean repeating your speech, repeating it in front of a mirror. It means sometimes seeking feedback. You can record yourself and watch it back later. You know, you can listen to it better. In fact, you can practice in front of a small audience or one person, 2 people, 3 people. It's called dress rehearsal. You do a dress rehearsal. You've been invited to give an important speech. Share your points with somebody and say, am I communicating? So don't just neglect this step, because you may be making a mistake and nobody has a chance to tell you that's a mistake you're making. Practice might not make it perfect, but certainly it brings it close to being good. And this is the single most important thing to remember, that your journey of becoming a public speaker, you must be ready to practice. These techniques we have discussed are not just habits. It's stepping stones to becoming an excellent public speaker. They foster your connection, they build trust, and they enhance your influence. But remember, like any art form, public speaking takes time to master. There are no shortcuts, there are no quick fixes. It requires practice, requires patience, and a willingness to learn from each experience. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. So that's what Aristotle says. So we keep practicing, we keep refining. That's why we must look for ways to better ourselves. How do we better ourselves? Listen to other great speakers. Actually you might read their books on public speaking. You can hire a private coach, and there are many private coaches, people who can actually coach you in this business, because being a good public speaker gives you a chance to earn more money. And now we invite you to improve your money management skills. So we want you to give yourself a chance for financial intelligence. Send a text or send a WhatsApp to 0708 150 137. You can actually get yourself a copy of the book, Wallet Words, that I have authored. And this book actually has answers to the questions we have just talked about.